So we're going to look at the frequency polygon. And the frequency polygon it's related to the histogram. So the idea is going to be this. So we have our class limits. And what we do is we compute our class boundaries. So, get a pen here that's working. And then put one here, one on the end here. And so we can do our bars using the class boundaries. Like so. Now we compute a class midpoint. Now the class midpoint is the average of the limits, not the average of the boundaries, average of the limits. So we're going to get a class midpoint. And if we project that location to the tops of the bars and put a dot, this gives us the points for our polygon. Now again, the class midpoint. This is the lower class limit. Plus the upper class limit. Divided by 2. So again, we're not averaging the class boundaries, we're averaging the class limits. And remember, we find the boundaries in the very middle of the natural gaps that we'll discover in our classes, that exist between our classes. So this is your first class, second class, here's your third class. We'll find the boundaries in the very middle of those gaps. And then to find out where this boundary is and where that one is, well, we notice, well, how big is the space here and here, here and here? It's all going to be the same amount. So whatever this difference is turning out to be, the distance from the boundary to the limit, boundary to limit, we'll use that same distance here and use the same distance here. So we get our class midpoints, and what we do is we connect our dots. And that gives us our frequency polygon. Now what we're going to do is, to make this polygon, well, be a polygon, we need to connect it to the horizontal axis. Now what the author has done is that the author has noticed the distance between the class midpoints. Whatever distance this is, the author has decided to use this distance. If you take this distance and repeat it, so this is the same distance d, d. You go a distance d away, again using the midpoints here. We're using the midpoints. I'll just put a point there. Connect. From the last midpoint, go a distance d even further. And then connect. Let me do an example. We'll go through an example here. So let's take a look. So we go back to our McDonald's example. And in this case, what we have see if I can squeeze this on here. Class limit. I'll put on the class limits first, and this isn't going to be drawn to scale. So 125, 174, 225, oh, sorry, 175. 224. Ooh, this is going to be kind of small. Let's see, I can do a different example here. Let's do a smaller example. It's not going to fit. So let's say we have our frequency chart. And let's say we have, let's just use the first three classes. 75 to 124, 125 to 174, 175 to 224. Hopefully this will fit. And the frequencies were 11, 24, 10. So let's try to place these on our chart. So 175, 75 rather. 124, 125, 174, 175, 224. And then the boundaries for these, well, let's look at the gaps between the classes. Now the first class is 75 to 124. Second class is 125 to 174. The third class is 175 to 224. And as you notice, there's these natural gaps that show up. So we're going to cut each of these gaps in half. And if we do that, we get 124.5 and 174.5 at these two locations. Now we notice that 124.5 is 0.5 away from 124. It's also 0.5 away, or half a unit, from 125. 174.5 is half a unit away from 174. It's also half a unit away, 0.5, from 175. So that says the distance between a boundary and a class limit is 0.5, or half a unit. So to come up with these last class boundaries, we'll place them so they're 0.5 away from the class limit. And that'll do it. 74.5, which is 0.5 away from 75. 224.5, 0.5 away from 224. So for space reasons, I'm going to get rid of these. And let's take a look. Let's do our bars. Squeeze this in here. Let's go 5, 10, 15, 20. And again, we use the class boundaries for the width of the bars. So 11, and it's going to do something kind of like this. This one, 24. Ooh, I'm going to shoot right past 20. Get way above our limit here, or above our tick mark. And then this last one's 10. About like that. So those would be our bars. And so this would be our histogram. Again, a histogram is, we use it for numerical data. Bar graphs are used for categorical data. So now we need the midpoints to place the points on the tops of our bars. Now the midpoints, we take the average of the upper class limit and the lower class limit. So 124 plus 75 divided by 2, or we just add them together and divide by 2. And let's see, we get 99.5. So the middle value here is 99.5. And that is how we place that point. For these two, again, using class limits, not boundaries. Add them up. And let's see, what do we get for that? 149.5. So the middle value here, 149.5, and there we get a point. Finally, 175 plus 224 divided by 2, and let's see, that's going to be 199.5. And so we can connect our dots. Now, to make this a polygon, what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of, sorry, we're not quite that far yet. We need to have these lines connect to the horizontal axis. And so what the author notes is this. We take the distance between the midpoints. And that's 50. And that's 50. So what we do is we just go another 50 below the last midpoint. So that's going to be 49.5. Because 99.5 minus 50 is 49.5. So we put a dot, and then we connect. Then we go 50 above this midpoint. So 99.5 plus 50, well, that's 249.5. And then we can connect like that. So that's how we can do a frequency polygon. And so what we're going to do, let's clean this up. There's a lot of stuff going on here. We don't need these anymore. We've placed our points. And we don't really need the class limits. We can get rid of these. And we don't really need the histogram anymore. And then there we go. We need to clean this up a little more. Maybe we don't need all this other class information. Put the numbers down here. We'll keep the midpoint value. We'll keep those. What I'd recommend is at this point, instead of erasing what we did, stop the video and then redraw it. So if you've already started erasing, you might want to pause, go back and redraw it as it was, and then skip forward. And this will be a little messy here and there, but this will be your frequency polygon. All right. And that's gonna be it. Now, just another note, you could also, instead of using absolute frequencies, you could use relative frequencies. In other words, percents. You're going to use percents. And so instead of having these frequencies, you just have percents, but you're going to get the same type of thing. So that's going to be it. And you call this a relative frequency polygon at that point. So that's it. If you have any questions, let me know.